Okay, so ready to dive into something, something we all know, but
Yeah.
don't think about much. Water.
Mm,
Seems basic.
absolutely.
But get this, we've got this paper excerpt actually by Albert Szent-Györgyi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Szent-Györgyi Nobel Prize and all that.
Impressive source.
He's talking about water and bioenergetics, which,
What's bioenergetics? So how living things use energy, basically.
right. And he's saying water is way more than just like the stuff that fills us up.
Interesting. I mean, we know it's vital, but more than just filler.
That's what he's getting at. Like
Yeah.
key to how life even works.
All right. I'm intrigued. Got to hear this. So where do we start?
Well, scientists for a long time, they focused on the fancy molecules.
You mean like proteins, DNA, that sort of thing?
Exactly. The complex stuff. And
Yeah.
water was just a background.
The solvent, right? Just there to make things happen.
Yeah, basically. But St. Georgie's like, hold up, big mistake.
Hmm. Makes you wonder what we've missed, focusing so narrowly.
Right. To get why he's saying this, got to zoom in on those water molecules.
Okay, so the H2O itself, what's so special?
Well, it's their structure. See, they've got these slight charges.
Oh, yeah, polarity,
Hmm.
right. One side a bit positive, the other negative.
Bingo. And that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Because of that, they can form these bonds with each other.
Hydrogen bonds, weak, but super important.
So it's not just a bunch of individual molecules just floating around.
Not at all. Think of it more like a constantly shifting dance floor.
A dance floor.
Yeah, the water molecules are partnering up, then switching partners all super fast.
I like that. A water molecule mosh pit.
Kind of, yeah, but a very organized mosh pit.
Okay, I'm seeing it. But how does this dance actually impact life?
So the old thinking was that the influence of these charges, it was limited,
Limited, you mean?
only affecting a few layers of water
So
molecules.
like just a thin shell around whatever's dissolved.
Yeah, pretty much. But
Hmm.
turns out that's not the whole story.
Hold on. So what we see, like that glass of water, there's more going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. And this is where we get to the iceberg idea that Szent-Györgyi talks about.
Okay, icebergs. Now things are getting interesting.
Right. So picture this. You cool water down, even just a little.
It turns to ice. Yeah, I get that.
Right. But WHY, because those hydrogen bonds get strong enough to form like a lattice.
Okay, basic science. We all know that.
Sure, but here's the kicker. This lattice formation, it's not just when water freezes.
You're saying it happens all the time, even at room temperature.
Yeah.
Wait, hold up. You're telling me there are like tiny ice crystals in my water right now?
Kind of, but they're super small. And they don't last long because the heat energy breaks them apart.
So these like fleeting icebergs popping up and vanishing constantly.
Exactly. It's a hidden whirl of structure, always there, but we don't usually see it.
Wow, that's kind of trippy. But okay, so lots of tiny temporary icebergs.
Yeah.
Where does life fit in?
This structure is really influenced by its surroundings, especially surfaces.
Surfaces.
Yeah.
Like the glass holding my water.
Well, yeah, but think more like the surfaces inside U.S. cell membranes, proteins, even our DNA strands.
Oh, okay, inside the body. And the surfaces, they do what to the water?
They can actually tip the balance towards more structured water.
How so? Like, is it a magnet thing?
Not quite. It's more that the surfaces act like shields, protecting the water molecules from that disruptive heat energy we talked about.
Ah, so the hydrogen bonds get a chance to, what, chill out and link up more?
Exactly. So those icebergs get to be bigger, last longer, and get this, they can extend thousands of molecules deep,
Thousands. Whoa, that's not so tiny anymore.
especially in tight spaces, like inside our cells.
So wait, the way our cells are built, that impacts how the water acts.
Precisely. And it's not just theory, there's actual evidence for these multi-layers of structured water.
Wow, so water's not just filling space, it's forming these like dynamic structures, interacting with everything.
You got it. And this is where we start to see why water might be so essential to life itself, not just a passive backdrop.
Okay, my mind is officially blown, but how does this actually play out? Like in a living thing? Give me an example.
Well, Szent-Györgyi himself, he was a muscle researcher.
Muscles, like the ones I'm using to pick up this water bottle.
Exactly. And he believed these icebergs were crucial to understanding how muscles work.
No way, seriously, go on.
So muscle contraction, it uses this protein, actinomyosin.
Okay.
This protein forms a gel in water. Szent-Györgyi thought this gel is probably because of icebergs forming around the protein molecules.
So the water structure is what? Literally holding my muscles together.
It's a fascinating concept, and it gets wilder when ATP comes to play, the energy currency of our cells.
Okay, ATP, I've heard of that.
When it interacts with this ectomyosin gel, the water structure collapses.
Collapses. What does that do?
That collapse, that's what makes the muscle contract.
Whoa, hold up. Are you telling me my muscles are basically tiny water engines?
It's a compelling idea, right? The energy from ATP isn't directly moving the muscle.
It's like triggering a change in the water, and that's the power.
Exactly. It highlights how interconnected everything is in living systems.
This is incredible. So water isn't just sitting there, it's an active player in, like, the most basic stuff our bodies do.
And this changes how we think about muscle function on a fundamental level.
Mind blown. For real.
Mm.
So muscle contraction is one example, but what other mysteries could these icebergs help solve?
Well, for starters, how about cell membranes? You know, how they let some things in, keep others out?
Yeah, semi-permeability, right. I remember that from biology class.
Right. Used to be all about the size of the holes in the membrane, like a sieve.
Yeah, like small stuff gets through, big stuff gets blocked.
But now, thinking about this structured water, maybe it's not just about the hole.
I mean, the water itself is part of the filter.
It could be. It's about how the water structures around the membrane and the water structures around whatever's trying to get through, how they interact.
So like two icebergs trying to merge.
Yeah, great way to visualize it. Compatible structures, they blend, the molecule gets through. If not, they're repelled.
Whoa, that's another level of control, beyond just the physical barrier.
And then it gets even more interesting when we think about ions like potassium and sodium.
Potassium, sodium, aren't those electrolytes? Like what you need to replenish after a workout.
Exactly. Essential for all sorts of bodily functions. But here's the thing, cells are way more permeable to potassium than sodium. Even though sodium ions are smaller,
Wait, if it's just about the size of the holes, that doesn't make sense.
you're catching on. Szent-Györgyi thought maybe potassium ions don't mess up the structured water around the membrane as much as sodium ions do.
So potassium slips through the water lattice easier, while sodium gets stuck.
That's the idea. Like potassium has a VIP pass for the structured water, it gets smooth passage.
This is insane. So even how electrolytes move around
Yeah.
could be because of these icebergs in the water.
It's a fascinating possibility, isn't it? Shows how subtle differences, even just between two ions, can have a huge impact because of how complex water is.
This is seriously making me rethink everything I thought I knew about biology.
It's a good reminder that even simple things, like water, are far more complex and amazing than we usually give them credit for.
No kidding. Makes you wonder what other hidden wonders are right under our noses, just waiting to be discovered.
That's the beauty of science, right? Always more to explore, more to learn, more to blow our minds.
Well said.
Makes you wonder just how much we've missed, overlooking water in all this.
Right. It's like we were so focused on the stars of the show, like the
Yeah.
proteins, the DNA.
And the stage they're performing on is water,
Exactly. But it's not just a stage, right? It's like influencing the whole performance.
shaping how things interact, yeah.
Totally. This whole iceberg idea, I bet it has implications for like how proteins fold, how enzymes do their thing.
Even DNA replication, gotta involve those water structures somehow.
Right. All these processes, it's all happening in this water environment.
And we're just realizing it's not a passive environment, it's dynamic, changing part of the action.
It's like the water's a choreographer kind of guiding the whole dance of life.
I like that analogy. And we're just figuring out the steps.
Okay, that's kind of profound, but it makes me think, if these water structures are so important, what happens when they get messed up?
Messed up how?
Like dehydration. We always think of it as just not enough water. But now,
Oh, you're thinking maybe it's also about messing up those iceberg structures that our cells need.
exactly. Like it's not just the quantity of water, it's the quality too, right? How well it can form these structures.
Right, like you need the building blocks, but you also need the blueprint.
Makes dehydration seem a lot more serious suddenly, not just being thirsty.
So does this mean the kind of water we drink matters too?
That's what I'm thinking. Like, is all water created equal, iceberg-wise?
That's what researchers are trying to figure out. Yeah. Makes sense. If the structure is so vital, then things that change the structure.
Well, they could matter a lot for our health.
So like filtering, processing, even the temperature of the water.
All potentially affecting how those icebergs form.
Wow. Okay. This deep dive is seriously making me rethink everything. It's pretty amazing, right? Water, this simple thing, turns out to be this complex, dynamic partner in how life works.
No kidding. Never gonna look at a glass of water the same way again.
That's the beauty of science, huh? The more you look, the more you find amazing complexity, even in the stuff we take for granted.
Absolutely. Speaking of amazing complexity, there was this part in Szent-Györgyi's paper that really caught my eye.
Which part?
He talks about how these iceberg structures could explain why potassium is so important for our cells.
Potassium.
Yeah,
Yeah, he points out how it passes through cell membranes way easier than sodium, even though it's bigger.
exactly. And he's saying it's because potassium doesn't mess up those icebergs as much.
It has a VIP pass through the structured water, yeah.
That's a great way to put it. But why would our cells even favor potassium so much in the first place?
Good question. I mean, it's essential for a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Nerve impulses, muscle contractions, fluid balance.
So our cells need it, but why potassium and not, like, sodium? They're practically neighbors on the periodic table.
Well, sodium has its own roles, mostly outside of cells, like blood pressure, fluid volume. But too much sodium inside cells, that can cause problems.
Problems like,
Remember those iceberg structures, how they're key to all this order and function inside the cell?
yeah?
Sodium ions, with their strong charge, they can disrupt those delicate structures.
So potassium is like a well-behaved guest. Sodium's the one who crashes the party.
Haha, perfect analogy. Potassium fits in with the order, sodium's the troublemaker.
So basically, our cells evolved to prefer potassium because it plays nice with the icebergs, lets everything work smoothly.
That's the thinking, yeah. And scientists are still working on the details, but it shows how even tie and Y differences, like between two ions, can have huge effects because water is so complex.
Seriously, mind-blowing stuff. This is making me question everything.
It's humbling, right? Water, electrolytes, these basic things we kind of thought we understood. Turns out they're full of surprises.
No kidding. Makes you wonder what other mysteries are hiding in plain sight.
That's what keeps science exciting, the constant discovery. The deeper we look, the more we realize we don't know.
Totally. Well, on that note, maybe it's a good place to pause for now. But stick with us, because we're going to go even deeper into what all this iceberg stuff means for health and disease in the next segment. Stay curious, folks. Okay, back again. And I got to say, I'm still wrapping my head around how much water is involved in, like, everything happening inside us.
Yeah, it really changes how you see things, doesn't it?
Totally. Like, we focus on the big molecules, the complicated stuff.
But often it's the simple things that are really running the show behind the scenes.
Exactly. And speaking of running the show, we've talked about muscles, cell membranes, all that. But where this gets really interesting is when we start thinking about, like, health and disease.
Yeah, the big question, could messing with these water structures actually make us sick?
That's what I'm wondering. Is this just a cool theory, or could it be a factor in, like, real-world health problems?
Well, it's still early days in the research, but there's growing evidence that disruptions to structured water could be involved in a lot of conditions.
Seriously? Like what?
We're talking everything from cancer to Alzheimer's disease.
No way. Those are, like, the biggest health challenges we face.
And the evidence is pointing towards water playing a role, at least in some cases.
Okay, so what kind of evidence are we talking about here? Give me an example.
Let's take cancer. One of the things that defines cancer cells is they grow out of control, right?
Yeah, they ignore all the normal signals and just keep multiplying.
Exactly. And some researchers think that changes in the structured water around those cancer cells could be part of what's driving that crazy growth.
So how would that even work? What kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, cancer cells often have different stuff on their surfaces compared to healthy cells, like different proteins or sugars sticking out.
Okay, so they look different on the outside. How does that affect the water?
Those altered surfaces can actually change the structure of the water nearby.
So it's like the cancer cell is sending signals through the water, telling itself to keep growing.
It's a possibility, yeah. And it's not just cancer. Researchers are looking at water structure in neurodegenerative diseases too, like Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's is such a scary disease, and we still don't really know what causes it. How could water be involved?
Well, with Alzheimer's, you get these amyloid plaques in the brain, these clumps of misfolded proteins.
Right, and those plaques basically mess up brain function.
Exactly. And some scientists think that messed up water structure around those plaques could be making things worse.
So instead of water helping to keep everything organized, it's actually part of the problem.
It's complicated, and we're still figuring out the details. But the takeaway is water isn't just sitting there. It's a player in both health and disease.
Wow, that's heavy stuff. It really makes you think about how fragile the balance is inside our bodies.
It really does. And it highlights how much we still have to learn about how things work at that microscopic level.
Okay, so this is all pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, if these water structures are so important and so easily disrupted, what can we do about it? Is there anything we can do to, like, protect them, keep them healthy?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And while there's no easy answer, there are things that seem to influence water structure.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the good stuff. What can we do?
Well, first and foremost, stay hydrated. Remember, those icebergs need water molecules to form in the first
Right,
place.
got to give them something to work with.
So drinking enough water throughout the day, that's essential. Can't emphasize that enough.
Hydration, check. What else?
The quality of water might matter too. Filtering, processing, all that. It could potentially change water structure.
So maybe that super filtered fancy water isn't the best choice.
It's possible, but we need more research to say for sure. Some experts think natural spring water might be better with all its minerals and stuff.
Interesting. So ditch the plastic bottles and go for the natural stuff.
It's something to consider. But beyond just the type of water, there are other things that could play a role. Like some studies suggest that electromagnetic fields from stuff like cell phones and Wi-Fi could mess with water structures.
Oh no. Seriously.
Uh-huh.
All the tech we use every day could be disrupting the water inside us.
It's a possibility, and researchers are definitely looking into it. In the meantime, it might be a good idea to limit exposure whenever you can.
Okay, noted. Reduce EMF exposure. Got it. Anything else we can do to keep those icebergs happy?
Some people believe that grounding, like walking barefoot outside, could help.
Grounding. Seriously.
Yeah. The idea is that direct contact with the Earth's surface can sort of harmonize the water in your body.
Wow, that's wild. So just taking off your shoes and feeling the ground could actually be beneficial.
It's an interesting idea, and it really speaks to how interconnected everything is.
I love that. It's a good reminder to appreciate the simple things, right? Like water and how crucial it is for our health.
Absolutely. It's been great exploring all this with you.
Likewise. This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what water really is.
That's what it's all about, right? Opening up new perspectives, questioning what we think we know.
Totally. And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity too. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those icebergs flowing.